Welcome to Shatterproof, the Autoglass Journey for Independence. This week, what it takes to be a winner and succeed in the AGR industry with guest host James Chapman of Richardson Glass Service, the 2023 XYG Autoglass Technician Competition Gold Medal winner. If you haven't already liked this podcast, or if you haven't subscribed, click below. That way, anytime we update the content, you'll know and be the first to get access to all of this great media and industry information. So, without further ado, here is part one of Shatterproof, the Autoglass Journey for Independence podcast with James Chapman. All right. Hey, everybody. It is Gary Hart, Executive Director with the Independent Glass Association, and welcome to Shatterproof, the Autoglass Journey for Independence, the podcast. And today, our podcast is titled What It Takes to Be a Winner and Succeed in the AGR Industry. And we've got James Chapman of Richardson Glass Service, who just happens to be the 2023 XYG Autoglass Technician Competition Gold Medal winner. We like to put the emphasis on first place. We saw you chewing and gnawing on that award there. And also, too, 2021 Pilkington Clear Advantage Autoglass Technician Competition bronze medalist, placing third in that. Also, too, he is on faculty with the Autoglass University, and we'll talk about Autoglass University later on in this podcast. It is a very important aspect of our industry. The training if you're new, but then the continuous ongoing training and understanding CEUs and things of that nature. And he's also the host of his own podcast, Put Him on the Glass podcast, which can be found on Spotify. We'll make sure that we link everything down below so that you can get in touch with James. So James, welcome to the podcast. How are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me on. I'm pretty excited. I've liked podcasting, so it's always nice to be asked to be on one because it's just a fun format, I think.
Good deal. So, and I know a lot of people have been blowing up your inbox and your DMs and saying, hey, congratulations. I know the guys at Sika are real happy and whatnot. But for you, just before we get into it, what's it been like in like the last month? Because it's been about a month now, a little over a month. And what's changed for you just professionally and personally?
Professionally, not too much has changed. My company threw a party for me, like when I got back and everything, which was cool. Got right back into the workflow, training a new trainee at our shop. So that's kind of, I was doing it before the competition and went back into that. Not too much professionally has changed for me. There's not been any kind of like big opportunities or anything like that I can think of. Personally, my granddaughter's starting to walk, so that's kind of she's going to be 9 months next week. So that's kind of awesome. So watching her progress and develop into her own little human is pretty awesome.
So basically, she'll be installing autoglass soon.
At some point, she'll know how to do repairs. If nothing else, she'll at least know how to do repairs.
Because I think it goes crawl, walk, install glass, run. The way the industry's been these days. So, well, why don't you give us a quick background for those that don't know you? I have the privilege of knowing you for many years now, and I already know your background and how long you've been in the industry. But for our listeners and our watchers out there, how long have you been in the industry, and what brought you into the industry?
Okay. So I got into the industry in 2003. Prior to that, right out of high school, I became a basket maker, like Yogi Bear style boo-boo baskets, the picnic baskets and stuff. There was a company here called Longaberger Baskets, and literally we took raw materials, we made them into a basket, then you had to pass a QA, and then that QA had to pass another QA, and then it was sold to the public. So you had like 3 steps of accountability: yourself, and then the first QA and the second QA. And if you had like a broken splint or your weaving wasn't tight or your basket just didn't look good in general, then it came back to you. So that kind of taught me the craftsmanship of being accountable for my detail-oriented actions. And then I got the layoff, man. I was the first one of the layoff. The market took a downturn, so that means that no one's buying baskets because it's a disposable income kind of thing to buy because they're mainly decorative. So once that took the downturn, I got the layoff. And then I was looking for something to do, and my mom came across the classified autoglass trainee. And, she was like, well, I think you'd be good at it because I have a little bit of mechanical background with I didn't work on my dirt bikes, but I knew how to do some stuff on my dirt bikes. So she said, just go ahead and try it. You never know. So I tried it and liked it. I got a week's worth of training like everybody else did.
Trial by fire.
Uh-huh. Just figure it out. So that's kind of, 20 years later, and things are definitely a lot different than they were. So, but that's the background.
And that first week, do you recall who your mentor was? Like, who really held your hand, or was it just literally like, hey, follow me and don't screw it up? I mean,
there was no mentor. The guy that actually trained me, his name was Scott Rice. And what was funny is he was transitioning out of auto glass and into being a paramedic.
I thought you were going to say basket maker for a second.
No, to be a paramedic. And he was kind of like 1 foot out the door, and this was when you had a cold knife, you had a long knife, and you stuck your head up there. And then for the first year doing this job, I had to use a hand caulking gun. Didn't have the power tools. That company was just kind of like, they were Salt Lake City based, but they had a shop here in Ohio. And then the lady who was running it, they caught her for embezzling money, so they closed the shop. And then I had to go find another job within like 6 months of starting. And I got on with Triumph Auto Glass, and then Triumph started my real learning of the industry. Because the first week and then the first few months, it was just like Hail Marys, dude. Like, I had no clue. It was kind of how he taught me to do it. He ran through. We were using Sika, and he ran through the prep real quick, and then I rode in the van with him, helped him set a couple windshields, and then at the end of that first week, it was like, because we had the little GMC Safari vans, the cargo ones.
Okay.
Or their Chevy Astro van. And they said, here's your van, buy these hand tools. Basically, they told me what hand tools to buy, and then sent me out in the van with 5 jobs. And that was one of the longest days I can even remember. Like, it just, I remember clearly going home and talking to my wife, and who's like a huge sporter and a huge like cornerstone in my life. Obviously, she's my wife, but like, she was like, just stay with it. I think you're going to like it. You just got to get over this learning curve, because it was just kind of like, and you call Scott and he wouldn't answer his phone. This was the first point of cell phones, the little Motorola, like throw the antenna up, and he wouldn't answer his phone, and nobody was all constantly on their phones back then. So it was like, well, which Nextel was an amazing thing, because you could always bug people. We got class as it kind of went down, which kind of was a kick in the butt when your manager was trying to get a hold of you, and he could beep right through. But yeah, I guess I didn't really have a mentor until the Triumph days.
Okay.
And at the Triumph, I really started to develop into an installer.
Cool. Yeah, and that's funny too, because I think what's swapped places on a few things is, one, on the Nextel, now it just seems to be that people will migrate towards social media to ask their questions, which it still blows my mind, because it takes more effort to get on social media and do things than it is to just ask a human to reach out to somebody who is a mentor. And we'll kind of get into that a little bit later, is that in this industry, you should be finding your mentor, somebody to continue to learn from. We got Chris, yourself, Brad. There's a lot of guys that are out there that, if you network, hitting them up for advice, and if they don't know, they're going to point you in the right direction. But it's just so amazing to see so many people just go to Facebook, get into the group, go to the group, make the post, and then sit there and wait to get their answer. Where that waiting's costing you time, and especially if you're with a customer, you almost want to go back to the Nextel days where you're like, boop, hey,
yeah,
it's going down, man. Like, what are we doing? Like, how do we rectify this quick? But your story is like so many other people, where their journey into this industry didn't necessarily start by like going to Auto Glass University and going through some sort of even like early mentoring or early training through like a high school program, where you're wanting to learn a new trade or vocational skill. I know there's a group up in British Columbia. They actively work in their communities to bring auto glass, collision repair, and those things as a trade to the high schools, and really early, like, we're talking 8th to 9th grade, so that people start getting the idea of maybe I should hone my skills. To your point, you were good mechanically to a degree with your motorbikes and whatnot. So it's very interesting that most people come in by that trial by fire, and their mentor or their trainer gone weeks, months later.
Yeah. Yeah, and it doesn't take much. Like around here, we have vocational schools that the kids can go to that have auto body or automotive tech, which is like just working on the cars, ASE certified. They got diesel. But I've tried for years this was pre-dating my Auto Glass University instructor gig, was trying to talk to these, at least give me 4 or 5 days with these auto body kids to have them experience glass. Because they could go into the auto body and they have that glass experience. Now they're the guy for their shop, and so they're not having to that learning curve of bringing in an outside glass guy. And they're like, well, I already have that experience. And none of the trade schools around here are even interested in that.
Right. Yeah, no. And that's because it's too, there's a good word for it. It's not necessarily, it's too far down, I guess is a good way to put it, that it's not in the spectrum of where you would expect auto glass to be, considering you're more likely as a vehicle owner to have an auto glass claim in your life, and then collisions kind of like, here and here.
Well, we're kind of looked upon as like, and I mentioned this to a few people, and you may have heard me say this since we've known each other for a while, was like, we're the stepchildren, and not in a bad way. We're the people that are forgotten. We're the guys that are fly-by-night shops. We're the guys that come in and mess your cars up because the population has been fed that it'll never be as good as factory. No matter what you do, it'll never be as good as factory as it was. And, in the industry, we understand that that's not absolutely the case. I mean, we deal with recalls all the time, the paint letting loose and leaks here and leaks there and different things that we're definitely not respected in the automotive industry like we should be. Because not everybody can do what we do. Talk to certain body guys, talk to certain mechanics. They won't touch glass. Nope. But yet they have a level of respect that we don't have. And I think it's kind of going to change because there's a lot more people who are interested in doing the job better and presenting it to the public that it is important. People like yourself who are with the independent, shops and go on and say, listen, you need to market yourself as we are safety feature. We do care about your car, and that we're going to take care of you and we're going to make you safe. We take pride in what we do. And then that kind of, I think, puts a better image in the population than just, hey, these guys are going to come in, it's going to leak. You don't believe how many times people come to me, customers, and they're like, well, it's not going to leak when it's done. Well, no, I'm not that guy that's just going to come in and throw it in for $50. I'm going to be the guy that's coming in, and I'm going to walk you through the process and let you know that if something does happen, that we're going to take care of you and your vehicle's not going to be ruined. If for some have a chemical that doesn't flash right, we have urethane that lets loose, we have, whatever, funnels into our, tank, we're going to take care of you. You're not going to be stranded. And I think that stigma of our industry needs to catch up a little bit to the other automotive industry, I guess you want to call categories. But
it does, yeah. And a good part of that too, from what I have really gathered, and I have a lot of experience in the collision repair world as well, is that when it's almost like a concierge service or a valet. You go up to a body shop, an estimator comes out, everything's looked at, and then they're like, hey, here's your rental, and we'll call you, and on the app you can watch the progress of your vehicle, and customers who have had that experience, and it's even like if you go to your dealership for service, you're going through those steps or those processes. And unfortunately, in our industry, a lot of glass shops really don't put a lot of emphasis on that initial customer onboarding, and they overlook it for reasons that A lot of them don't have systems that allow them to onboard properly. And then secondary to that is they onboard with minimal information. It's shocking how many shops fail to get email addresses, correct telephone numbers, full addresses. And the thing is, like, if it's a cash job, you should be treating it exactly as if it was an insurance job as far as the amount of information, and even go past that. And that's the stigma I think customers also see too. It's not just, hey, my buddy had a leak and he went to XYZ, and it ruined his carpet and his headliner and this and that. And for months they were driving down the road and the car would just whistle. You're not going to do that, right? And it's like oh no, a lot of the public has heard about that. And then I think in a lot of markets too, you've seen me post in some of this, and it's shocking to get the phone calls from these guys that do it, the owners. And it's more shocking that there's people in these groups that support, they're veterans, that support these business models as they are, knowing full well it hurts the industry, and it also is encouraging that behavior. And I know here, like in Arizona and North Carolina and Pennsylvania and Florida, you could drive around and at any like strip mall see a little sign at a red light that says $100, like handwritten $100 windshield replacement, or I'll pay you $250 credit gift card, and that stuff's everywhere in a lot of these markets, and it's horrible. I don't even know how the industry hasn't rallied around legislative issues when they come up to say, you got to kill that. And I'm sure right now there's some people out there cringing that that's their business model. And they're going to hate me for it, or they already do hate me for it. I don't care. It's disappointing,
And one thing that I think that a lot of veterans, because the way that the industry was, and we're trying to take it, kind of get, like you said, a cohesive bond between independents to take it to make sure that we're taking care of our family. But a lot of them do not respect that there is no buffer of a service manager or an estimator between the technician and the customer. So if your technician has a bad attitude, or your technician is doing that work that is just shows that it's going to leak, or they're damaging your car, or they don't take the time with the customer to kind of be like, hey, this is the expectation you need to expect. Like, set that expectation right off the get, because there is the CSR. They take a lot of information, but they're just taking information. They're not really a buffer. They're scheduling your job for you. Once that customer is scheduled, now it's your job as a technician. You don't have that. Even in shop stuff, you need to go out and do the pre-inspection. You don't have an estimator going out and doing a pre-inspection. You don't have a service manager going out and do a pre-inspection. In other parts of the automotive industry, you have the service writer, then the manager, and then the technician. The customer never meets the technician, most usually, unless there's something really wrong. Well, you don't see dealerships putting their technicians out there, because a lot of these guys are rough around the edges. We can't afford to be. I'm coming from a big, large tattooed guy. We can't be rough around the edges. We have to be somewhat presentable, and we have to speak in a way that doesn't intimidate our customers to think that, I know everything. Your vehicle is, going to be great, and just kind of intimidate them a little bit. And then those customers turn into problem customers. And in the other parts of the industry, that you don't have the rebates and stuff, because when you're dealing with, I'm not sure about the collision because you're dealing with insurance companies, but when you're not dealing with an insurance company, it's harder to give somebody money off on a mechanical service. You see?
Yeah.
And I don't,
and that's true. You can't, there's no cut in the corner. I mean, if you want, if you rear end somebody and you want to do this out of pocket, there's not a lot of collision shops that are going, you know what, I'll do this. And certainly if it's an insurance based job, those DRP programs are pretty rock solid. And about the only place you might be giving something back to the customer is in their deductible. But when we look at deductibles outside of glass, comprehensive for collision and mechanical usually has that caveat that it's your pain and it's out of your pocket. But if it had a collision that it wasn't your fault, the other insurance company is going to subrogate, the parties will subrogate, and somebody else pays for it. But a lot of states have gone to the measure that they say you cannot give any discount off the deductible or waive it. And it's shocking how many shops in some of these states where those laws are at just completely look the other way. And what they don't understand is it feeds that attitude and giving away money. There should be no giving away and of anything. But your big thing is if you're charging the insurance company X, and I have already had this thrown up in my face case wise. I've been involved in some depositions and things of that matter where they go, well, Gary, you said publicly that an auto glass shop will charge X, but then for a cash job they charge Y, and Y's down here. Well, why aren't the prices the same? And then, you could do your best to explain, well, it takes more to collect. We know what collections sometimes are like with the networks or the insurance companies. And then the amount of information, the call of the claim, the handling, all of that stuff. But that's about where it ends. And then everything else should be the same. To your point, pre-inspection, taking photos, travel time, none of that changes. It's all still compressed in that vacuum. So, and two, I think another resilient point to bring up in this is about 34% of our industry, they are the CSR, they are the technician, and they also handle the accounting. And maybe substitute one of those three for a spouse or significant other. And it's to your point, rough around the edges. You might be a great technician, but you're a horrible people person. Or your temper is, you go to your supplier and they didn't have it right, and now you're start your day in such a horrific attitude that you don't care how it presents to your customers. And especially when you answer the phone, people can pick up on your attitude when they're calling.
Absolutely.
And it's a shame because that's about a third of our industry are that demographic. Cook, what is it? Chief cook, bottle washer, and cleaner. You're all three built into one. And it's hard to find out what their why is. In why are you not making changes? Why don't you want to grow your business to where you hire a CSR, where you hire someone to do your books and your accounting so that your family life can get back to what it is? I don't understand that formula because there's people like you. There's dozens of people they can turn to in this industry to say, help me figure this out.
Well, and I'm going to plead a little bit of ignorance here because, and I understand that's never an excuse, but I'm not a business. I am a technician. I have handled some things, and when you're talking about like the deductibles and things like that, I kind of see some of that from the outside, but I don't really have a stance on it because I'm a technician. I don't own my own shop. I work for a family-owned company. We are an independent. We're a small company, and like I've said before, we're right down the road from the force of evil, and so we're trying to catch as much of the market as we can, but I don't have a lot of the insight to tell people. But I will say this, coming from a technician point of view, if I had to schedule my jobs, if I had to wear all the hats, I could see how that would become very taxing and get to the point where it would be hard to wake up with a positive mindset.
Yeah, I know I can speak for Glass Part Match. The IGA looks at data from time to time, and about close to 2/3 of the part matching inquiries happen between 6 p.m. and 1 a.m. on a daily basis. Wow. And that's because these guys are out there scribbling things down or telling their customers, hey, text me your VIN, or, hey, and so now your personal mobile phone becomes this business conduit that if the job goes sideways, you've given out this number, people know how to text you. There's just a litany of things that people overlook in that. And, it also comes back to, hey, why did you get into this industry? And I think maybe it's a good time to say, why did you decide to start competing?
Oh, okay.
After all of this, working and now all of a sudden you're like, hey, now I'm going to throw a curveball in my professional career and start worrying about the fall or early or late summer to say, I'm going to go compete now. What was your why for that?
Well, I was in a funk where I was just kind of like, I had kind of plateaued. There wasn't really nowhere for me to go, nowhere to move up in the current company I'm in. I was kind of just where I was at. And I was in like this funk where I just was doing the job every day and was kind of like, I was kind of thinking about getting out of the industry, and I was kind of thinking about, different like avenues to, change, because I was working a lot of hours. There was a lot of things going on. And then I had the privilege of going to Pilkington Distribution Center in Columbus, Ohio, and watching Cody Allen, who was a previous champion. And at that point, he was working for Equalizer, traveling around in their ambulance doing demonstrations. And I had the privilege of watching him doing windshield, which was an amazing, because I thought I was pretty okay at my job, but I was doing my job. I had plateaued. I really didn't want to go any farther than I was, as far as like, because I didn't know the avenues to travel down to become better. I thought I was at the point where I was as good as I was going to get. Well, Cody, then I met him afterwards after he did his demonstration, and he was like, I think you should look into competing. I think you would really enjoy it. And he really was like super supportive, which was kind of weird coming from an industry where the local shops around me, they're not supportive of each other. They're kind of like, well, this guy's a hack, or this guy sucks. And they kind of say that to customers. And not only say it to their customers, say it to their, their accounts, like, don't use that guy. He sucks. And it's like, Cody was like telling me, dude, I really think that you could. And this guy had never seen my work. He just said my attitude. He said, your attitude is very, on point. I think you'd be good at this. So, I looked it up and figured out how to get there, worked with my boss on getting there, and then competing in 2019 in Indianapolis. Because I think it was 2018. Yeah, it was 2018 when I met Cody. 17, 18. Those years get fuzzy because I wasn't in a place where I was like, hey, let's go. I that funk. And so after going to Auto Glass Week in 19, I think that's where I met you, and I met Drift, and I met Whacker, and I met I saw the Pro Set for the first time. I saw I saw all these new tools that I didn't even know were out there. Because once you pigeonhole yourself and you don't really care, you got this set of tools, and you get the Equalizer catalog, and that's it. So you kind of flip through Equalizer, and I had a lot of the Equalizer wire tools and different things because I competed with the Raptor in 19. I just wanted to meet all these people and become better, and then met Alfredo, and I met a lot of people who were like very influential. And not only were they just influential, they said, hey man, if you need anything, here's my number. And I wasn't on social media at that time, so it was like, wow, really? So I called these guys, and I called Alfredo, and he was like, yeah, like the judges are looking for this, this, and this, when I was getting ready to go to Orlando. And then, because I watch his YouTube videos and stuff, and then, Whacker, I'd call him, be like, hey man, I got this old car. I've done a lot of old cars, but he's got a special connection with old cars, classic cars.
Yes, he does. Deep vein out here. Lots of old cars in Arizona.
Yeah, and he's got a special, in my opinion, he's got a special place in his heart that makes that so knowledgeable for him. He's got a passion for it. So called him on a few things, and never once didn't answer my phone call. Drift Chris, the same way. And here recently, Michael McCarthy, the same way. Like, he will always answer my phone call. And even though I've been doing this a long time, I still need, guidance from that every, you know what I mean? And, you've always answered my Facebook messages. You've always answered my phone calls. You've never put me off, So once I got into that family, and then I competed, and I missed the finals in 19. But it gave me such a wealth of knowledge that I wanted to learn more, and it reignited my passion for this.
What was the one thing at that first competition that threw you for a loop that you weren't expecting that happened, if anything?
Well, people don't understand how hard it is, and I didn't either. I thought it was a normal install. Granted, it is a normal install. But when you have peers in our industry looking over you and judging what you're doing, and then you have the crowd on the outside, it takes you away from what you're doing, and you kind of get into now you're tripping over your own fingers. Or, okay, straight up, I spilled primer on the floor in Indianapolis had a can of it. Had to stop what I was doing and clean up the primer before I continued. Then, not only that, I usually take the mirror off and set it in the back seat, the rearview mirror. I forgot to put the fucker on.
Well, that's, and that's where a customer will call, go, hey, am I supposed to have a mirror anymore? Or is that not needed?
Oh, I'll never forget Bob Panic. I didn't actually know him in person at that time, but it's out of the car, and he's like, "Hey, James." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You can go ahead and put your rearview mirror back on now." And I was like, "Ah," you know what I mean? It was like one of those, ah. So would I do it again? Absolutely. I mean, obviously, I competed 4 times, but would I take that first plunge? 100%, and I recommend anyone do it.
Sure. Yeah, and that's the thing. That is kind of different about the Olympics, and it's really any sport where you have spectators, because they all become amateur professionals all of a sudden, so to speak. And I'm not degrading all the people that stand around the banner, and they probably been in the industry doing installs for eons, but to a degree, they're you can hear whispers and talking of, oh no, I wouldn't have, I did this. And then it's odd because we don't have customers walking around us while we're doing an install with a lab coat on and a clipboard. And I know from time to time there are those customers that just want to talk your ear off while you're doing the job, but they're certainly not sitting there going, James, no. James, no. And nope. Yeah, that is, you almost have to go into your own world. But there's also something a little bit more reassuring. While that's happening, the venue that you're working in is pristine, though. You can't ask for it. You get to set up your tools properly. You don't have to worry about your van. It's perfectly air conditioned, perfectly lit. It just seems like there's some distraction around that. But so that you got from Indianapolis, we all had COVID, and then we show up in Orlando. What did you do differently in Orlando that compared to Indianapolis? What was the transition to then now move you into one of those place finishing spots?
I honestly didn't install glass for a whole week prior to that. My wife and I took one of our trips of a lifetime. We started in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and rode our bicycles to Washington, D.C. Then we jump in a car in Washington, D.C., drive back to Ohio, jump in a different car, and then drive to Orlando. So I get to Orlando, and then they had moved the competitor meeting up to 3:30 when it's supposed to be at 6. So I show up, and I'm naked in the parking lot, changing into my uniform, driving down to the thing. But I didn't install a windshield or any glass for a whole week prior to that.
Wow.
So I think the only thing that I did different was I changed a couple things in my daily practice, my daily installs, that I wasn't doing in 19, that I wasn't doing previous to that. And I had done that again for San Antonio, where I missed the finals there. But I was coming off the 3rd place. There wasn't too much different, other than I was more comfortable in the situation, because I was okay with people being so close to me, and I was okay with the people outside who's, like you say, you hear the whispers and you hear, oh my God, I can't believe you didn't do that, or different things that's going on. I had actually gotten to a point where I was so exhausted from the ride the previous that I was honestly in a space where I was at ease. And so I really think that flow helped me.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just exhausted hearing it sounds like planes, trains, and automobiles. You're in a bike, on a car, switch cars just in case someone's tailing us. And is that the evil competitor tailing me to find out my skills? And,
well, we had to switch cars because we had to come home and get our dog.
Oh, wow. Okay.
My daughter was dog sitting for the week we were gone. Well, she had plans, so she couldn't dog sit for the week I was at the Olympics. So we had to come home. We got our dog, and then we went to Orlando. And that's kind of how we had to come back to Ohio, because the original plan was to take off from D.C. to Orlando, but things got through for a loop, and we made it work. But yeah.
Thank you for tuning in for part 1 of What It Takes to Be a Winner and Succeed in the AGR industry with guest host James Chapman. You've been listening to Shatterproof, the Auto Glass Journey for Independence podcast. Join us next time. Make sure that you subscribe and like this so that you get the notification. And we want to thank our sponsors for this video, eDirect Glass, also the makers of Glass Part Match, which is free. So make sure you get your free Glass Part Match account at www.iga.com/GPM. And for Augie by AirPro, that amazing piece of technology for targeting, puts right on your windshield, no targets to set up. Check out the link below, learn more about Augie. Again, thank you for joining us. I look forward to seeing you next week. I actually won't see you, but I want you to join so that we can keep putting these podcasts out. Make sure you share this with your friends, and again, hit that subscribe button below. For the Independent Glass Association, this is Gary Hart. Again, thanks for listening.